There's a certain kind of power that awakens inside a woman the moment she realizes she is no longer asking for permission to exist, to shine, or to take up space. That moment when she looks at her reflection and doesn't just see a face, she sees a legacy. She sees a journey. She sees somebody who survived storms that were designed to break her and came out with her spirit still loud, still bright, still undeniable. A woman who knows her value carries herself differently. She walks with a truth that can't be bought, borrowed, or shaken loose. She moves with the quiet confidence of someone who isn't chasing love, validation, or approval. She is choosing environments that recognize her worth without needing an explanation. See, when a woman understands her value, she becomes harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to derail. Because you can't play a woman who already knows the game. You can't diminish a woman who already learned how to rise from her lowest points. You can't intimidate a woman who's done the internal work to stand firm in who she is and what she deserves. She's not out here begging for a seat at anyone's table. She builds her own space, sets her own terms, and invites energy that aligns with her purpose. That's where her strength comes from, the inner decision to never again shrink herself just to make others comfortable. And when she steps into that version of herself, everything changes. Her voice becomes clearer, her vision becomes sharper, her boundaries become stronger. She stops chasing temporary people and temporary moments and starts choosing things that nourish her soul. Opportunities show up, respect shows up, peace shows up, because when she knows her value, she becomes a magnet for everything that matches it. There's nothing louder than a woman who's no longer afraid to say no. No to disrespect, no to inconsistency, no to half love and half effort. She becomes a force that doesn't bend for pressure. She rises through it. And every time she rises, she sends a message to every woman watching her that they can rise too, that they can choose themselves, that they can rebuild, that they can walk away from anything that dims their light and walk toward anything that honors their soul. The power of a woman who knows her value isn't just in how she carries herself, it's in how she transforms the world around her. She becomes a reminder that strength is beautiful, that resilience is royal, that worth is non-negotiable, and once she understands that, once she truly embraces it, there is no limit to who she can become, what she can build, or how far she can go. She is her own revolution, her own breakthrough, her own rise. There comes a moment in every woman's life when the world's noise begins to fade and her own voice finally becomes the loudest thing she hears. That voice carries truth. It carries clarity. It carries the reminder of who she really is beneath expectations, disappointments, and the pressure to be everything for everyone. When a woman knows her value, she stops entertaining the things that drain her energy and distort her identity. She stops bargaining with situations that make her feel small. She stops giving discounts to people who don't even deserve access. She rises into a version of herself that refuses to settle for half love, half effort, or half respect. Because knowing your value is not just a mindset, it's a decision. It's waking up and saying, I will no longer bend backwards for people who won't even lean forward. It's the moment she chooses herself, not out of selfishness, but out of self-respect. She realizes she cannot bloom in places that never wanted to water her. And once she understands that, she walks away from anything that threatens her peace, her joy, or her growth. A woman who knows her value moves with a certain sacredness. Her time is sacred, her emotions are sacred, her energy is sacred. And she protects all of it with boundaries that don't shake under pressure. She doesn't argue with disrespect. She doesn't fight to prove her worth. She doesn't run after people who are already walking away. Instead, she chooses environments where her soul feels safe, supported, and seen. She starts loving herself in ways she once begged others to love her. She builds a life where she no longer needs validation because she validates herself every time she stands up, every time she chooses peace, every time she refuses to settle and the world notices. A woman who knows her value is a presence that can't be ignored. Her silence speaks louder. Her confidence carries further. Her boundaries become her strength, not her fear. She no longer reacts from insecurity. She responds from wisdom. She no longer chases potential. She recognizes patterns. She is no longer impressed by promises. She pays attention to actions. She learns that protecting her heart is not weakness, it's strategy. It is survival. It is self-love in motion. People may call her too much or too distant, but that's because they were used to the version of her that overgave, overexplained, and overlooked her own needs. The new version, the woman who knows her value, doesn't apologize for expecting respect. She doesn't feel guilty for choosing herself. She understands that lowering her standards doesn't increase her worth, it only decreases her peace. And peace is something she refuses to lose again. When a woman knows her value, she becomes unshakable. Life may still challenge her, but she no longer internalizes the disrespect. She no longer believes the lies others told her about who she is or what she deserves. She replaces doubt with confidence, fear with courage, and pain with purpose. She understands that everything she went through wasn't meant to break her. It was meant to introduce her to her own strength. And that strength becomes the compass that guides her to better relationships, better opportunities, and a better version of herself. Because a woman who knows her value doesn't just survive, she evolves. She becomes intentional. She becomes powerful. She becomes untouchable in the best way. There is something extraordinary that happens when a woman finally steps into the truth of who she is, not who the world told her to be, not who society tried to shape her into, but who she actually is at her core, in her essence, in her soul. The moment she realizes that her voice carries weight, her intuition carries wisdom, and her presence carries impact, she becomes a force the world can feel without her needing to say a single word. Her power isn't loud or aggressive. It's grounded, steady, and undeniable. It's the quiet flame that burns even when the wind tries to blow it out. It's the calm confidence that grows from knowing she has already survived the worst and still stands unbroken. When a woman understands her power, she no longer doubts the value she brings into rooms, relationships, and opportunities. She stops thinking she needs to be more to be enough. She stops shrinking herself to make others comfortable. She stops apologizing for existing boldly, dreaming big, or refusing to settle. She knows that her presence alone shifts energy, opens doors, and inspires others. She carries herself with grace. But make no mistake, her strength walks right beside her, and there is beauty in that kind of alignment, because when her power becomes internalized, her choices reflect it. She chooses honesty over pretending. She chooses peace over chaos. She chooses growth over comfort. She chooses to walk away from anything that isn't evolving with her. She understands that her life is not something happening to her. It is something being built by her, piece by piece, decision by decision. She becomes intentional with her circle, protective of her heart, and focused on her purpose. People feel her presence before she speaks. They feel her confidence before they hear her story. They feel her wisdom before she gives advice, because real power isn't in how loud you are, it's in how aligned you are. And a woman aligned with her power becomes magnetic. Opportunities find her. The right people respect her. The wrong people fear losing their grip over her. And she stands tall in all of it because she no longer lives for approval, she lives for truth. Her influence grows in ways she doesn't even realize. Other women watch her and learn what strength looks like. They see how she handles challenges with resilience, how she carries heartbreak with dignity, how she transforms pain into motivation. She becomes a walking reminder that you can be soft and strong, gentle and powerful, loving and unshakable at the same time. She becomes an example, not because she tries to be, but because her authenticity inspires others to rise within themselves. And influence doesn't always look like a spotlight. Sometimes it's the quiet encouragement she gives. Sometimes it's the boundaries she sets. Sometimes it's the way she refuses to settle for less than she deserves. Sometimes it's the way she builds herself up without waiting for anyone to save her. Her life becomes a message that says, you are allowed to be powerful. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to become everything they said you couldn't. When a woman understands her power, her presence begins to speak before she ever opens her mouth. She becomes a vibration that cannot be ignored, a light that cannot be dimmed, a truth that cannot be denied. She becomes unstoppable, not because she forces the world to notice her, but because she is too aligned with herself to be overlooked. Her influence becomes her legacy, her strength becomes her language, and her authenticity becomes her crown. She steps into rooms and shifts the atmosphere. She stands in her truth and the world adjusts itself around her. This is the power of a woman who is fully awake, fully aware, and fully committed to becoming the strongest version of herself. She doesn't just change her life, she changes the lives of everyone who watches her rise. There is a rare kind of freedom a woman discovers the moment she realizes she doesn't need anyone to confirm her worth, approve her choices, or validate her existence. It is a freedom born from self-respect, real, unwavering, uncompromising self-respect. When a woman is rooted in that kind of strength, she stops chasing what was never meant for her. She stops auditioning for people who were never qualified to judge her worth. She stops pouring herself into empty hands hoping someone will see her value, because now she sees it herself, and that changes everything. Self-respect is not just a boundary, it's a lifestyle. It is the way she speaks to herself when no one is listening. It is the standard she refuses to lower, even when she loves deeply. It is the decision she makes when the world expects her to choose convenience over growth. Self-respect becomes the foundation she builds her life on, steady, solid, unwavering. And once that foundation is laid, her entire identity evolves. A woman rooted in self-respect doesn't move from desperation, she moves from certainty. She is not afraid to walk away because she knows walking away is not losing, it's choosing herself. She understands that staying in places where she feels unseen is the real loss. She knows that her spirit deserves spaces where it is honored, not tolerated. Her heart deserves love that is consistent, not conditional. Her life deserves people who match her effort, not drain it. And the world gravitates toward this energy. Her confidence becomes effortless. Her presence becomes impactful. Her decisions become intentional. She no longer reacts to disrespect because she removes herself long before things reach that point. She no longer allows confusion to linger because clarity is part of her peace. She no longer entertains anyone who takes advantage of her kindness because she finally understands that being kind does not mean being a doormat. A woman with deep self-respect carries herself with a subtle power, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, just sure, just real. She doesn't need attention to feel worthy. She doesn't need validation to feel beautiful. She doesn't need permission to dream big. She lives by a truth that says, I am enough exactly as I am. And that truth guides her through every season of her journey. People might misunderstand her confidence as arrogance. They might call her distant or difficult. But what they're really seeing is a woman who has stopped abandoning herself to make others feel comfortable. They're seeing someone who will not betray her own heart just to belong. She is no longer interested in proving herself to people who refuse to see her. She is no longer emotionally available to situations that cost her peace. She is no longer accessible to anyone who treats her like an option. And because she no longer seeks validation, she becomes it. She becomes the example of strength. She becomes the model of resilience. She becomes the standard that others look up to. She becomes a reminder that respecting yourself is the first step to creating a life that reflects your worth. Her independence is not rebellion, it is alignment. Her confidence is not ego, it is healing. Her boundaries are not walls, they are gates protecting the sacredness of her heart. She knows that valuing herself is not selfish, it is necessary, it is survival, it is power. A woman rooted in self-respect becomes unstoppable because nothing external can shake what is already anchored within her. Life may test her, but she won't fold. People may leave, but she won't lose herself. Challenges may come, but she won't crumble. Her value is not up for debate. Her worth is not up for negotiation. Her spirit is not up for compromise. She becomes a woman who doesn't just walk through the world, she rises through it with dignity, with clarity, with strength, with a flame inside her that will never again be dimmed. And as this message comes to a close, remember this: the world changes the moment a woman decides to honor herself, the moment she chooses her worth over fear, her peace over chaos, her future over familiar pain. The moment she stands tall in her truth and refuses to shrink for anyone. That is when life starts moving with her instead of against her. You are not here to be silent. You are not here to be small. You are not here to carry the weight of expectations that were never meant for you. You are here to rise, to step into power, to build a life that reflects your value, your strength, and your unshakable self-respect. Never forget who you are. Never forget what you deserve. And never forget that the strongest version of you is still unfolding, still rising, still becoming. This is your moment. This is your journey. And this is your rise.